What's good, yo? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while. Yeah, I know, man. Like about 2 months. My job been crazy. Been doing a lot of crazy stuff. But I'm back. Last time we did a reaction video. We did the horror OnlyFans. So I thought it was only right we get back to that and check out 6 Facebook horror stories. So y'all ready? I'm ready. Let's go.
I had just moved into a new apartment. And being the broke post-grad I was, I had pretty much nothing except a few boxes of stuff from my parents' house. It was nice to be done with school and have my own place, yeah, but I didn't even have any furniture. Like I said, I was completely broke. So I thought maybe I'd be able to find something at least decent on the free section of Facebook Marketplace. If you've ever searched for furniture on Facebook Marketplace, you know it's not great.
Anybody ever do that? Look on Facebook to buy stuff? I heard shit about Craigslist. Never even thought about doing fucking Facebook. But hey, to each his own. You know what I mean? I ain't gonna do it. Cause a lot of motherfuckers out there are shady as fuck.
Half the couches there are held up with duct tape or something along those lines. I knew I couldn't be picky, but I wanted something that could at least last me until I had enough money to buy a nice one. I'd been scrolling for well over an hour, and was probably already a week into the backlogs. I scrolled back to the top and refreshed the page. The second I did, I saw an ad pop up titled, "Brand New Couch, Never Used, Free for Pickup." The post wasn't even a minute old, and I knew I had to be quick if I was going to have a chance at getting this thing. The couch was in perfect condition. I quickly typed out a response to this.
That's red flags right there. Everybody knows that there's nothing free in this world, especially a fucking couch. It's a setup. My spidey senses is
Seller, saying I'd be willing to take it off their hands. I got a response not even 3 minutes later that read, "Yeah, the couch is all yours if you can come pick it up tonight. I'm available anytime past 9 p.m. I was slightly put off by the response.
Exactly.
It was currently noon, and this guy wanted me to wait till 9 p.m. to pick it up. Way past when the sun would have gone down.
Exactly.
But I ignored it, thinking maybe the guy had work till then or something. So I texted him back saying that was fine, and proceeded to wait. Come 8:30, and I sent over a text to the guy saying I was on my way. I typed in the guy's address, and quickly realized the guy lived in the middle of nowhere. Now...
Second red flag. After 9 o'clock, in the fucking middle of nowhere, I'm not going. I'm not going. And if I am going, I'm bringing like 3 people with me. A baseball bat, a gun, a knife, and wherever else I can fucking find.
I live right next to the Rocky Mountains, so yeah, there aren't that many people nearby. But this guy was seriously in the middle of nowhere. My GPS said it would take 45 minutes to get there, so I quickly set off. As I drove, the housing development slowly became less and less frequent. My GPS eventually took me on these really sketchy one-way dirt roads. About 10 minutes later, it said I arrived. Sure enough, there was an actually decent-looking house, but there was no other civilization for at least a few miles. Somehow I had service and was able to send out a text telling the guy I was there. Not even 10 seconds later, I got a response simply saying okay. I figured that was this guy's way of telling me he was ready, so I walked up to the front door. I knocked on the door, to which someone responded in a muffled voice.
The door's unlocked. Come on in. Nope. 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 Nope, I'm not going in. I'm not going in. I'm like, you have the audacity not to even answer the door? Really? That's how we're doing it? Nah.
From the way the voice sounded, it was as if whoever said it was right on the other side of the door. I opened the door and peeked inside before entering. I quickly realized how weird the situation was.
You think?
The place was pitch black, with not a single light on. Now, This was before every cell phone had a flashlight on it, so literally all I could use to help me see was the moonlight shining in from one of the windows. I yelled out a hello, to which I could hear someone responding from a door on my left that was open. I could tell it led to a basement. The voice said,
"Come on down here."
We on red flag number 10 now, man. The basement. Everybody knows not to go in the basement. Wow. But okay. Do you, homie?
Here, I got the couch ready to be moved.
At this point, I was completely on edge. I replied, saying,
No, that's okay. I gotta go.
I turned around, swung open the front door, and started running back to my car. I unlocked it, got in, and proceeded to relock the doors. I gave one last glance at the house before leaving. No one had chased me, though through one of the windows I...
You serious?
Time to scout.
Fuck ever.
could see the dark outlines of 4 different men just looking out at my car. I booked it out of there at that point, and drove straight back to my apartment. When I got back, I checked my phone to see I had 3 new messages from the guy's number. The first one asked why I left, followed by one asking if I still wanted the couch. But the third one is what...
Yo, it says you are lucky. No. Alright. I moved a lot of people in my time. I never went alone. Always had somebody with me. Especially if it's a big bulky furniture. I don't understand why people go by themselves. Especially nowadays, like, lucky you though.
disturbs me most. It simply read, "You're lucky." This is by far the most disturbing experience of my life, and has caused me to never use Facebook Marketplace or anything similar again. To this
Go to the
day,
store, stop being
I'm
cheap.
convinced those guys in that house that night never had the intention to sell me a couch.
You think?
A few weeks ago, I had to fly out to a small town I'd never been to before in order to look for a place to live at.
Yo. Why does it say drama queen on her shirt? Oh, this spinning to be good.
School. I was flying alone, though before the trip I had researched all sorts of apartments in the area on Facebook Marketplace, and was actually able to set up a few meetings to look at places. The first meeting was in the late afternoon, in a sort of remote residential area. The landlord sounded fine over email, and asked me to call him an hour before meeting him to confirm I was coming. And so I did just that. I called him an hour before, but he didn't answer. I decided to just start walking to the house, and hope the landlord would show up by the time I got there. About an hour later, the guy called me. He asked me if I was still coming, to which I replied,
Yeah, I'm actually only about 5 minutes away.
though the guy's reply caught me completely off guard. He replied, furious, saying I wasn't supposed to show up for another hour. I quickly realized he was right.
Why is this man dressed like that? Look, he got shit stains all over his shirt. His shirt matches the walls. No.
Back then, I had a pretty old phone. It wouldn't automatically change times whenever you switch time zones. I forgot to change it manually, and realized I was showing up an hour early. I
cares?
explained the situation to the guy over the phone, but I could tell the dude was furious. Now, I get I was in the wrong, but still, getting that mad over something as small as this seemed weird to me. I explained to the guy I'd be willing to just stay outside of the house till the agreed upon time, to which he quickly replied saying no, almost pleading with me. At this point, alarms were going off in my head, but I ignored them as I really needed a place to live. I decided I'd just go get some food at a nearby place to pass the time, until I needed to be at the house for the tour. Once the time came for the tour, I showed up to meet the guy. The guy looked to be in his 50s, and if I'm being honest, he looked disgusting.
Exactly.
Some of his clothes were half torn, and it didn't even look like he'd showered for weeks. I didn't feel comfortable.
Yo, what is up on this party? Are those tattoos? One says 65. And the other one looks like a windshield. With a windshield wiper. Clean your doogie shirt.
And found myself just wanting to leave. Though, like I said, I really needed to find somewhere to live, and there weren't that many choices in terms of real estate at that point. So I decided to stay. As I was discussing the details about the house with the guy, I couldn't help but notice a man leave the house from a back exit. This man was young and extremely sketchy looking, even more so than the guy I was talking to. He took one look at us, ran out of the house to his car, and pulled away. At this point, I was full on disturbed. I asked the guy who that was, to which he replied it was another person he was giving a tour to earlier. The guy then proceeded to ask me a lot of questions. They weren't normal questions a landlord would ask.
Yo, he got tattoo tears. This motherfucker been in jail and killed people. Look, Scarface and everything. This dude's a straight killer.
But rather more personal questions, like how old I was, or what I was going to school for. The whole time staring into my eyes without blinking. I tried to give answers that were as vague as possible. Finally, we entered the house. Now, from...
Really? You actually still went in the house? I don't care how desperate I am. But I'm a dude. I think differently. Let's leave it at that.
From the outside, the house actually looked decent. But upon entering, you could tell the place wasn't taken good care of.
Hey, they look at the dude.
I followed the guy as we walked around the house looking at all the rooms. Every time I would ask about the condition of the house, the guy would avoid the question, simply saying it was unfinished. After we finished looking at all the rooms, the guy mentioned he wanted to show me a shed in the backyard of the house. Before I could say anything, the guy told me to follow him as he led me to the back of the house, outside away from the street, to this sort of detached shed.
Yo. Alright. The house is fucked up looking. He acting weird, asking you these weird ass questions. He's like, oh yeah, by the way, let's go check this shed out. I got something to show you in there. It's probably handcuffs chained to a wall. You probably got all types of torturing devices and saws and drills. Y'all watch horror movies. If you're watching this video, you watch horror movies. You know exactly what's going to happen.
When we got there, he opened the door, and I quickly noticed that there were stairs leading down into utter darkness. He flipped on a switch at the top of the stairs, but no light came on. Normally, the response for this would be surprise, or something like that. But he didn't say anything, and just started slowly walking down into the utter darkness, as if he expected no light to come on. The guy was now just standing there at the bottom of the stairs, in the dark, and said,
Aren't you coming down?
Hell no, bitch.
I said
Run.
nothing, still in shock that the landlord wanted me to follow him down into this dark basement cut off from the rest of the house. For whatever reason, I glanced back at the house and saw another guy in the backyard doorway.
What in the hell?
I panicked and ran into the woods. I didn't look back, and honestly I didn't want to. I don't know if they followed me, but after about a half mile of running, I turned around to find no one. I quickly realized the situation I was in. I was in the middle of the forest at sunset, with people possibly chasing me. Though, luckily, my phone had service, and I was able to find my way back to the hotel I was staying at with no other problems. As soon as I got back, I googled the house and did some more research on it. Apparently, The house had been abandoned for 3 years. I checked the status of the original Facebook Marketplace post I'd responded to, but of course, it was deleted. I debated whether or not to call the cops and report the situation.
There's no debating. Yes. I don't like cops at all. I don't trust them. But some situations you gotta call them. I debated if I should call the cops, but I don't know if they're gonna be there or not. And the cops probably won't do nothing anyway, which is true. They won't, but at least you have the report.
But decided against it, as I figured there wasn't much they could do. I can only imagine the guys I encountered that night were a group of homeless people with some unknown intentions. Whatever the case, the whole situation was extremely disturbing. My wife and I were looking for a used car on Facebook Marketplace, and actually found one we were really interested in.
So first we had a couch, then we had an apartment, or a house, whatever, and now we got a car. 3 major things that we don't need to look on Facebook to get.
It was honestly a really good deal, and as soon as we saw it, we texted the seller saying we were interested. The seller seemed perfectly normal over text, and we agreed to meet in a public mall parking lot. He said he wouldn't be available until he got off work at 5, so we agreed to do the transaction at 5:30. Come 5:30, and we arrive at the mall telling the seller what car we were in, just to get a text saying he was running late. We weren't in any hurry, and we figured he'd only be like 30 minutes or so. We both agreed it'd be a good idea to go into the mall and get some food at the food court.
If y'all heard me pouring, sorry. That was my adult beverage. You know what I mean? The adult iced tea.
Or while we waited. A good 2 hours went by, both of us pretty impatient at this point. And that's when we got a text saying the guy would be at the mall soon. This was in late fall, so it was already getting dark, and we were starting to worry that the mall wouldn't be as busy soon. A little bit later, the guy texted us saying we should meet him at another location, about 30 minutes away in a rougher area of the city. I looked up the address, and found it was a gas station right off the interstate. What caught my eye was the hours. It wasn't one of those 24-hour gas stations, and they were actually already closed. My wife mentioned how many red flags the whole situation was giving off.
Thank you. Thank you. Someone actually said what I said. But I guarantee it, they're still going to go try to get that car. That's probably not even for sale.
But honestly, all I was thinking about was the car and how good of a deal we had found. So we ignored them. We sent over a text saying we'd be there in 30 minutes, and pulled out of the mall parking lot, making our way to the gas station. When we got there, we pulled into the parking lot, and quickly realized how dead the whole area was.
So Bespoke Post, they just send you a cool box every month.
Wow, this is kind of awesome.
This thing is jam-packed. Look at this thing.
There were only like a few vehicles parked. After about a minute, my wife pointed out the car, and sure enough there it was. But it looked to be in way worse condition than the original pictures on Facebook Marketplace.
Yo, it looked like somebody took a bat to it. You're gonna be Flintstoning that bitch all the way back home. $12,000 in my ass.
The car was in a pretty dark spot in the parking lot, way in the back. I started pulling up to it.
Car don't even got no rims. How you not gonna have no rims on a car?
And when I stopped, my wife looked at me confused, but I swear, I could see something. I got out of the car, and that's when my suspicion was confirmed. There was a spike strip right in the middle of the road.
Oh shit.
Exactly where I would need to go to pull up next to the car. At that point, I knew something wasn't right. I got back in the car, backed up, and left the way I came. Once I got back home, I reported the whole situation to the cops.
Alright, we have one of the smartest people on this video. They left. They fucking called the cops. Reported it. Alright. I fucks with these two.
Though, I never even saw anyone. The only evidence I could give was the ad itself. I never knew what came of the whole situation.
Nothing.
The ad was taken down a few days later. I never heard back from the cops, so if they caught anyone or not, I don't know.
They didn't.
Either way, this situation has caused me to be a lot more cautious when using services like Facebook Marketplace.
You think?
I bought a Nintendo Switch off a guy I met on Facebook Marketplace, and he acted so horribly after the fact that it almost put me off playing the thing entirely. It didn't really give off that nice guy vibe at first. Like, it was only when I'd actually met him and bought the thing that he started getting weird. He kept trying to talk to me over WhatsApp, asking me how the Switch was, if I needed any help with it. Dumb, patronizing stuff like that. I politely declined at first, but it quickly gets to the point where I'm just leaving the guy on red and hoping that he'll get the message. He goes quiet for a bit, but then he starts the whole flirting routine again after about a week, and I have to kind of put my foot down and tell him that I'm not interested in him that way. Again, I kind of naively think he's going to just take it on the chin and move on, but nope. He starts off this big long message because all I can see is the little such and such a person is typing thing for about half an hour every time I go back to check the message thread. When the message comes through, it's this big tirade about how he'd been kind enough to give me a discount as it is. The least I could do was have some friendly chat with him. He actually accused me of flirting with him to drive it.
I will break your fucking neck. I just looked up and I seen that. I would destroy your life. You will let you die. I will let you die. Motherfucker. Why don't you just block his number? Especially if you see the little three dots going for half an hour.
Price down, too. Something I categorically deny. I'm not even into guys. Then came the threats of what he'd do to me if he ever ran into me on...
When we will accidentally meet in the dark alley in the middle of the night. Yo.
a dark street. By that point, I'd stopped reading entirely and just blocked his number. But he knew my name, and it's not like I can just go and change my name because of one psycho on social media. But still, I worry he'll make good on his threats one day.
I'm sorry,
what knocked me sick was how he made it clear that he was bigger than me, stronger, and faster, and that no matter how much I tried, he'd easily overpower me. The fact that he rubbed that in my face is just unbelievably scummy. But what frightens me is that he's actually right. One of the creepiest...
That's it? You just got a creepy ass text? Okay. That wasn't too bad.
Things I'd ever heard in my life is the story of a woman who had her life ruined by Facebook Live, of all things. Of all the social media horror stories you hear, this is one that's affected me the most, without a shadow of a doubt. And you have to forgive me if I get any details wrong. I'm pretty sure this happened a while ago, and it's been years since I read anything about it. So, this couple have a horrendous divorce. This whole nightmarish maelstrom of pettiness and malice that turned them both into nasty, vengeful people. The way I heard it, the wife basically rinsed the husband for all he was worth, got custody of the kids, got a whole bunch of financial stuff on her side. She even took her ex-husband's dog.
Oh, whoa, whoa.
He tried...
Whoa, Paul, time out. You take his money, And you get the dog too? I don't agree with that. Nah. I'm like, women get too much shit from dudes. Especially if the dude brings more to the table than the female does. So what, you had a couple kids? Some dudes build empires. Build fucking businesses. Corporations. And you get half because you had 2 kids? Then you take his dog? The dog don't like you. I don't like
Did all manner of messed up things to get revenge, but by far the most brutally effective thing he ever did to terrorize her involved an ad he posted on Facebook Marketplace. Basically, he pretends to be his ex-wife and posts a bunch of ads saying how she wants to make cuddle puddles with random guys and that she'll pay for it. Not exactly the wording used in the ads, obviously, but you get the idea. But the ex-wife doesn't hear about this.
Yo, did he just say cuddle puddles? What the hell is cuddle puddles? Yo. Anybody know what a cuddle puddle is? Come on. Anybody know what a cuddle puddle is? Because I would like to know. I like cuddling and never had a puddle. I'm my bad. Let's go.
The first she heard of it was when dudes actually started turning up at her house. At first she just...
Whoa. He gave out the address? Ooh, wow. You should never took a dog. You should never took the dog.
tells 1 or 2 of the guys to get out of there, obviously, and that they'd made a mistake, but it just keeps happening. Guys show up at her house, with every single one expecting something R-rated. The final straw came when a guy turned up at her house with a crowbar and actually tried to break in.
Wow.
Cops came, arrested the guy, and he actually shows the cops the advertisement the woman was supposed to have left on Facebook Marketplace. The angry ex-husband hadn't just posted one ad, he posted several, and each one was a step up in intensity. From what I read, the ads started out kinda seedy but relatively harmless, but then went on to include some seriously graphic stuff, along with her dress and contact details. Somehow the cops managed to prove it was the ex-husband posting the messages, and I'm pretty sure he got charged with some of those new revenge.
Hey guys, I'm so horny. I need a man for tonight. I will suck your dick for free. Come to my house. Hugs and kisses. Don't take a man's dog.
Type laws they introduced. It just scares the life out of me that someone can use the internet to do you harm like that.
Basically.
And most of us have big enough of an online presence to make that legitimately possible. That, and it's crazy how 2 people, who once loved each other enough to get married, can grow to hate each other so much that they'll do things to put each other's health in jeopardy.
Pretty much.
But I suppose that's just the world we live in.
That has to be the craziest story app in this video. Ladies, this should be a learning experience. Just because you're mad with somebody, just come to stop being greedy, stop being despiteful, just go your separate ways. Come to an agreement and keep it moving. Because when you fuck with someone's life, their house, their car, their house, I said house, their kids, and their dog? I never heard that before. I never heard anybody win in custody of a dog. So you got the kids and the dog. This motherfucker got nothing. Do I agree what he did? No. I don't. But do I understand where he's coming from? The hurt, the pain, the anger. Absolutely. Because when you're brokenhearted and despiteful and you're angry and you just don't give a fuck, there's no telling what you can fucking do. That's why nobody knows what they're capable of until a situation shows up, and then they do it. I believe wholeheartedly that every person on this earth can be a killer if the right circumstances comes and you're pushed to that limit. I think everybody could be a killer. Doesn't matter the situation, self-defense, whatever. Or somebody just pisses you off so much that you kill them out of the rage. But yeah, deep down, everybody has a killer in them. Simple as that.
In November of 2015, our family got the devastating news that my grandpa had lost his battle with cancer. And the grief we felt was made all the worse because of a decades-long rift between his two children, my dad, who's also deceased, and my aunt. I won't bore you with the grimly tedious details of their...
But why is my man in the bed dead? His eyes half open. Should be a paramedic come in to grab him and take him to the hospital, to the morgue, like do an autopsy. Like, my man just laying there fucking stiff as a board.
Squabble, but it basically meant in a time when we needed it the least, various family members were trading petty insults and bickering over his estate. The lowest point came when my aunt's side of my family basically looted his house, then rented a U-Haul to drop off boxes of all the stuff they didn't want, which amounted to anything they didn't deem financially valuable.
Right.
My mom was so mad at first, but the boxes turned out to be an absolute goldmine of journals, photo albums, and pieces of miscellaneous memorabilia.
See? Don't sleep on that. Don't sleep on that. Because I was watching a documentary about Albert Einstein and his journals at auction go for millions of dollars. Just for a journal. His thoughts in a book. His words. Oh, millions and millions of dollars just for a journal. Yes, he was an important, very important person in the science community. He changed the way we thought about everything. But it was just a journal with his daily thoughts. Millions of dollars. So don't sleep on it. Some shit can be worth it.
It was a lot of work going through it all, but boy was it worth it. You see, my grandpa served in the U.S. Navy for 25 years and had sailed all over the world on various warships. His photo albums and journals told an incredible tale and included the story of how he'd met my grandma in Honolulu during a break in the fighting. Like I said, it was an heirloom gold mine, but there was also a lot of random stuff in there too. Old records and little knickknacks.
See, I like shit like that. Because it's a soldier in the Navy during wartime. The things that he could have had in that journal that he was going through, his mindset, everything, what he was writing down. Yo, I would love to just read that journal. Because when I read something, I put myself into that situation. I dive into it. So, reading a journal about from a soldier during World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, even the Gulf War, just to see what their mentality was, their mindset, what they were going through on a daily basis. That's real fascinating to me. That's priceless to me. Like, real shit, that is very priceless.
That we figured someone else might find valuable. I'd actually sold some stuff using Facebook Marketplace before, so I proposed to sell everything I could, then split the money 3 ways between me, my brother, and my mom. They were happy enough with the apartment, so I boxed up what I thought I could sell and drove home to my apartment. I took some photos, posted some ads, and was quite surprised at how quickly some of the stuff sold. The old records were especially popular, and someone even bought my grandpa's old bottle cap collection. The one thing I didn't think I'd be able to sell was this ugly little statuette, one that I assumed came from the time he was stationed in the South Pacific. About the size of an old Nokia phone, it looked like it was carved out of some kind of black volcanic rock.
Tell me this has a curse on it. He met his wife in Hawaii during break. They're very spiritual. They believe in curses and voodoo and shit like that. Tell me this statue was cursed or hexed.
Shiny in places but rough in others. The craftsmanship was admirable, but the details were hideous. It looked like a mix between a frog and a man that was in the middle of giving birth to a pineapple. Seriously. And aside from that, it just gave me the creeps. But like I said, it was shiny, and there was a slim chance someone might see it as some kind of collector's.
Let's talk Cash App.
On.
Want to move money instantly with a few quick taps? Or buy, sell, and send Bitcoin just as easily?
Item, so why not at least
My
try
bad,
and
y'all.
sell it?
I need to get it.
Needless to say, when I got a message from a user who was willing to pay my $3 asking price, I was over the moon.
That's it?
We arranged a pickup time, and then I thought that was that. Matter over and done with. But I was wrong. I told the nice lady I'd sell it to her and we'd swap phone numbers, but I didn't actually take the listing down. So on the exact same day she was due to pick it up, I ended up getting another message from a different user. I didn't think that I'd get even one offer for the frogman, let alone 2. Only this new guy's message wasn't polite and inquiring. It was verging on frantic. The first message simply said, "Do you still have the idol?" And that was the first time I heard anyone use that word regarding the little carving or figure or whatever it was, and the use of the word idol struck me as distinctly odd. A technical term with sort of sinister.
Yeah, because the dude that just texted you knew exactly what it was. I would have asked, how you know what this is?
Connotations, I thought. I responded honestly, telling the guy I'd already made a deal with someone for the statuette and I was sorry for wasting his time. But if I'm honest, I only replied that way to try and coax him into making a bigger offer. And that's exactly what he did, albeit in the most dramatic way possible. "Call me and name your price," his next message said, along with his phone number. Those words, "name your price," really got their hooks into me, and although the nice lady I'd spoken to already was due to stop by that day, I gave the guy a call. First thing he asked me is how much I agreed to sell his idol for. His. Now he was claiming ownership on it too. When I told him just a couple of dollars, how I just wanted to get rid of it, he acted like I had just peed on the Mona Lisa. It got to the point where I politely asked him to make an offer before I ended the call. It was business, not the antique roadshow, I thought. And oh, did he oblige me. Like I said, I put that little statue thing on Facebook Marketplace for like $3 and I thought I'd be lucky to get that for it. This guy straight up offers me $1,000 to take it off my hands. And when he mistook my grasp of surprise for a rejection, he doubled his offer. $2,000 in cash for something I thought I'd end up having to throw in the trash. I was practically shaking by the time we ended the call. and I had to take a moment to compose myself before calling the prospective buyer, apologizing profusely but canceling the deal. I just couldn't turn that amount of money down, and I know that most other people would have done the same in my position.
Isn't it me? Does it look like that dude don't even have $2,000? I'm not trying to judge. I'm just saying. Do I look like a person that has $2,000? Absolutely not. And I don't. But I'm just saying.
We arranged to meet in a Whole Foods parking lot, one that just so happened to be across the street from my apartment. It was somewhere I'd used for public meetings before, a well-lit place that I knew well was covered by security cameras. It was a place I usually felt pretty comfortable meeting internet strangers, but for some reason, on this particular occasion, I was anything but chill. Maybe it was the fact that I'd never sold anything for $2,000 before, and just that amount of cash made me nervous. But in retrospect, I know it was something else. What made things worse is that I had no idea when he was due to arrive either. He just said that he'd give me a call whenever he was 5 minutes away. Couldn't give me an exact time, he just kinda told me he'd be there whenever he could manage it. I figured maybe 7 to 8 p.m. would be the latest he'd arrived. It was a weekday evening after all, but those times came and went, as did 9 and 10 at night, and the guy still hadn't arrived yet. It was almost 11 at night when I finally got the call saying he was on his way. By that time, I'd basically convinced myself the whole thing was some elaborate prank. I figured I was more likely to see myself appearing on Impractical Joker.
Another car without the rims. I'm sorry. I just think it's funny. It just looks like two black holes right there.
Then end up $2,000 richer. Point being, I was primed for disappointment. But despite being tardy, the guy was true to his word, and called me saying he was a few minutes away from the Whole Foods parking lot. And that's when the whole thing went from seeming silly to just downright dumb. Every single other time I met a buyer, it had been in broad daylight, with plenty of people around, not in a barely lit, deserted area. But God, that $2,000 was just too good of a prospect to ignore.
Greedy.
I ended up watching the parking lot from my window, telling myself that if the guy's car looked too sketchy or whatever, then I'd just turn my phone off, take the listing down, and forget the whole thing ever happened. But when this Lincoln Town car rolls into the lot, I'm
That's supposed to be a Lincoln Town car? I'm playing. I love this video. I'm playing.
thinking, if this guy really is some eccentric wealthy collector. And a quick phone call confirms that it actually is him down there. So I put some shoes on, throw on a jacket, and walk downstairs to meet the guy. It's not like he could see me leaving my apartment, so for all he knew, I'd walk like 10 blocks to be there. And like I said, if it seems sketchy, I could just leave, right? Anyway, I give the buyer a little wave as I approach his car, before having to politely decline taking the passenger side. Never get into cars with strange men, obviously. But he's only way too happy to get out. He didn't look quite like I expected him to either. Fancy car and all, but he looked like a history professor with some sort of meth habit. It's really all I can describe it as. Unshaven, barely washed, tweed jacket, and crazy hair. The whole thing went down like a sketchy drug deal. I basically demanded to see the cash, so I knew he was for real, and he was only too happy to show me. I could barely hide the delight on my face when I actually counted the cash, but that excitement paled in comparison to his own when he saw the little statue. From the way he was acting, I actually started to think I could have driven the price up by at least a couple of thousand.
Why'd be
And in
greedy?
the end, I broke. I just had to ask why the little statue was worth so much to him. He looked at me like I just asked the most naive question imaginable, then said something that sent chills running down my spine. If you only knew what this thing is capable of, the blood that has been spilled for it, he
Told you.
said. holding the little statue tight in his grip, like it was a cure for cancer or something. His eyes looked all wild, like he could barely contain himself, and his lips looked curled, like he might burst into a fit of giggling at any moment. I told him I'd keep an eye out for more statues like it, that maybe my grandpa had more of them stashed away somewhere. And he just smiled, and told me it was the only one that existed, how no one would ever find or create another like it. And then just like that, before I had the chance to ask him anything else, he just gets back into his car and takes off. And that was the end of it. I didn't ever learn anything else about the little statue or the guy who bought it, and honestly, I don't think I want to know anything else. The encounter in that parking lot was one of the most unnerving things that's ever happened to me. I don't think that little statue has any sort of powers or anything, and I don't doubt it was some kind of rare native art piece, something to justify the crazy price tag, but the thing that actually scared me was how that guy seemed to feverishly believe in whatever perceived power the thing had. And what he'll do as a result is obviously far more dangerous than any little carving or statuette. I just hope he doesn't do anything too crazy, like hurting other people or even himself, because then that $2,000 I made will be little more than blood money in my eyes, and I'll have played a part in something truly terrible. I just try not to think about it too much. It was a while ago now, and I didn't see anything about occult sacrifices in the paper or whatever, but every so often I think about that little black statuette, and how it made me feel when I looked at it, and I wonder if there wasn't something more going on beneath the surface.
Those emotions, they were put on hold by time, but at Claire's bridal weekend at a Verbo Beach.
Alright, y'all, thanks for watching the video with me. Hope you like it. Just subscribe to my channel. There'll be more like this. If not, there'll be one. There are gonna be some videos I'm gonna do of haunted places and everything like that in my near future, so look out for that. So be subscribed to my channel, please. It'll help me out. Thanks for watching. Peace.